Hello. Now, I know you would never possibly be able to tell because I live in Los Angeles and have a hoodie on and I'm still shivering, but it is April, which means that quarter one of 2024 has already come and gone. And I've never made a YouTube video about this before, but I have made a TikTok about the fact that I always make quarterly PowerPoint slides about the movies that I've been watching. It was an idea that I saw from somebody else on TikTok, and I love making PowerPoints. I do them for fun, and I make them very, very often for things that don't need to be PowerPoints, but they're just like a good, fun way for me to like work on something and have like both a creative and like an analytical fulfillment. That also helps me to keep track of all of my chronicling and archiving, which is the whole point of why I have this YouTube channel. I love doing that. I love being able to look back at all the things that I kept track of growing up, the books that I read, the movies that I watched, and knowing what I like and what I don't like and what I was into at the time and who I was. And this is just another way for me to do that. So we're gonna look at my 2024 quarter one PowerPoint, brought to you by Letterboxd and cute obsessive personality quirks as per always. This quarter I only watched 68 movies, which may be a lot for some people, and that's totally understandable, but you were talking to the gal that watched 365 movies in a year and would love to be paid to watch movies. Like, you know, my favorite podcasters who watch like 600, 700 movies a year. So 68 is pretty lackluster for me, but I've been doing a lot of reading. I've been catching up on quite a bit of television, and so other things have been keeping me busy. 20 movies in January, 30 in February, and 18 in March. 73.5% of that is a new watch rate. As we've talked about before, this is big for me because I love rewatching old movies, and I very purposefully force myself to keep this percentage for sure above 50, but the last couple of years I've done it above 60 and even 70, and I would like to keep it that way. I think that's good for me. So 50 of these were new watches and 18 of these were rewatches. The first movie I watched this year was a rewatch of The Adam Project with Sam in Savannah. This was on the first day of the year. We had gone out the night before and we were just lounging about, and we needed something that was like a good mix of everything, you know, something that's relatively easy to watch but wasn't a throwaway film. And this was on her list of things to watch as per my suggestion. She, you know, was in her Percy Jackson fixation, which she's been in since, you know, we were in the 6th grade. And so she wanted to see Walker Scobell and something. So we put it on, and I think it's always a good choice. It's a good, harmless, fun film with very enjoyable actors. The last movie that I watched of this quarter was a rewatch of La La Land with my roommate and one of our friends from college that came to visit us that had never seen La La Land before and had never been to LA. So we got to show him around and then watch this movie and point out all the places that we'd been to in the last week. So that was super fun. I personally love La La Land. I've talked before about the fact that I am a sucker for romantic movies, but any movie in particular that doesn't turn out the way that you want or expect it to. I think particularly in romance films, it's just more realistic and it says a lot about who they are as people and what was important to them. And I love the ending of this movie. I love it. This slide requires a little bit of explanation. So of the 50 new watches that I've seen this year so far, I rank all of them in a list. It helps me just keep track of what I liked, directors and actors I want to continue watching, and it's just like a nice, easy way to like keep track of it for like conversation starters and stuff. So these aren't necessarily obviously films that have come out in 2024, although a lot of them are, which is super exciting, or at least like the very end of 2023. But these are my favorite 15 that I've seen this year. In first place, and honestly, something that I don't think is going to be overtaken by the end of the year, is the Book of Clarence starring Lakeith Stanfield. This film really flew under the radar and then was released in Dumpuary, which is very unkindly kind of what the film industry refers to like January and February releases. So a lot of people didn't pay attention to it or hear about it. I don't think it was in a ton of theaters, but I absolutely loved it. I do think this is a film that like I can very clearly see its flaws. It's not perfect in any way, shape, or form, but it plays on religious and biblical themes and ideologies. And as someone who grew up in the church and is currently deconstructing her faith in the way that I grew up, I thought this film was phenomenal and touched on a lot of things that honestly like made me nervous, but are also extremely important. Lakeith Stanfield obviously can just play whatever he wants. He's so outrageously good. I love RJ Cyler because of Me and Earl, and it was such a delight to also see James McAvoy in like a role that was just perfect for him to play in the particular like tone of this film. So seeing all of them together was phenomenal. I love this movie and I can't wait to see it again once, you know, it's streaming or whatnot. My second favorite film of the year so far has been Tenet. I did not see this when it first came out, as I was not going to the theaters during the pandemic, and it just felt wrong to watch it at home. And so when they re-released it in theaters, I had big plans to go see it for the first time. And my childhood best friend, who this is one of her favorite movies, told me I needed to see it 2 times in a row. I love a movie that you need to see more than once. I love it and I respect the hell out of it. And so I watched it at home and then went to Universal AMC City Walk the next day to see it on an IMAX screen in 70 mil, and it was breathtaking and so good, and honestly immediately shot up to my second favorite Nolan film. And also I understand the R-Pat's hype now. I was never a Twilight girly growing up. It wasn't something my family wanted me to get into, much like Harry Potter or whatever else. And so I didn't, and I just didn't see the appeal of Robert Pattinson. I thought he's very talented, but I was never succumbed by his charisma, and he is so good in this movie. Elizabeth Debicki, who I have a soft spot for because of The Great Gatsby, was really phenomenal in this movie, and I think made that role so much more than the Nolan leading ladies that we usually make fun of. And then John David Washington is just so fun to watch. He's such a phenomenal action star. It was very easy to trust and follow him as the narrator, or nay, the protagonist of this film. So I really, really loved it. In third place, we have The American Society. I was really looking forward to seeing this film because the trailers looked delightful and interesting, and I enjoyed watching Justice Smith growing up in like paper towns, and so I was really excited to see him as the lead role in a film. I love that this took place in downtown Los Angeles, my favorite place on the face of the planet. I saw it, also another film on this list, very closely to American Fiction, which I think both of these films just play with the idea of what we expect from particularly Black artists, and I love the idea of excavating that through the plot lines of a film and having like part of the plot be about what we expect from them and part of the plot be how rich their lives are, and that being like part of a movie or a book or whatever that we don't usually get to see. I think this would make a really interesting double feature, and I thought, yeah, Justice Smith was just so cute and enjoyable. The leads had some of the best chemistry I think I've ever seen in my life, and I know that it's gotten some mixed reviews because not everyone thinks that those themes were portrayed in a worthy or respectful manner, and that's not my place to decide as a white person, but I've really enjoyed reading into the conversation that's been had around this film. In fourth place, Maestro. I don't care what anybody says. I thought it was phenomenal. I love B. Coops. I have made many a stink on social media about why we've decided that we hate him all of a sudden. It doesn't make any godly sense to me. I think it's so cool that he is so moved by film history and respects the hell out of it and like wants to make good films that mean something to people. I am a huge fan of earnestness. If it's not earnest or sincere, I'm not gonna care as much about it, and B. Coops is nothing if not earnest and sincere and respectful. And I thought he was fantastic in this film. I can't wait to see what else he does with his, you know, directorial career. And I hope that he doesn't get too bogged down in the game of it all that has to do with the Academy and whatnot. And also Carey Mulligan, who is just the light of my life, so. And fourth place, Dune Part 2. There's nothing new that I could say about this film that hasn't been said already, but I personally liked it a little bit less than the first one because I'm a big character person, and the first one really digs into people's intentions a lot more than in the second film. But holy shit, Timmy. I love Timmy just as much as the next Zillennial. I knew that he was talented, but particularly the scene when he walks in and he commands the council on Arrakis, I was just blown away. My roommate, who I went to go see it with, and I both got emotional during that scene because it was just powerful. He just was so outrageously good during that scene and played into a part of his being that I don't think we've ever truly seen before, that he could like command a room. And then obviously it was a beautiful film with an amazing score and amazing sound. The supporting roles in this movie, obviously, again, I'm not going to say anything new about it that hasn't already been said, but ultimately I liked the first one better, so that's why it's number 5 on my list. Problemista. This was so fun. I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it based on the trailers. It's just not usually like that whimsical, fantastical world is not usually my thing, but I think Julio Torres just like had such a clear vision about what he wanted this film to be and how he wanted it to be presented. And I love that. I love a weird film. I love when people decide to go outside the realms of like normal storytelling. I really enjoyed my time watching this. And then besides Julio, Tilda Swinton, who is the other lead character, was just like phenomenal and wacky and whimsical as per usual. 7th place, Origin. This is Ava DuVernay's first narrative film. She's usually a documentarian. She's made films like 13th. And I loved using this film to see her transition into the narrative space. I think this was the perfect film to start out to help her bridge that gap between the two. Ingenue Ellis Taylor is breathtaking, I think, in anything I've ever seen her in, but particularly in this film. The supporting cast obviously includes some of my favorites, like Johnny B, who I love with all of my heart, and Victoria Pedretti, who played a small part, but I just think she's the coolest thing that has ever existed. And Jasmine Cephas Jones, who is so multi-talented, and it all comes together to form this absolutely baffling depiction of a real-life woman named Isabel Wilkerson writing her book Cast, and like following both the storyline of the non-fiction book that she was writing and her real life as she was writing it to create this like multi-genre film. And I thought it was so revolutionary how it put all of those storylines together. This one was met with a lot of criticism, which I still find baffling, and a lot of people didn't watch it. It didn't get nominated for anything at the Academy, which I know was a huge deal, especially to the filmmakers and to Ingenue. But I would really suggest watching it and coming up with your own thoughts about it. And take tissues. Take so many tissues, because I didn't, and then I ended up using the sleeve of my jacket the entire time. By the time I left, it was stained from my snot because I cried so hard so many times. So take tissues, go see it. Next, American Fiction. I had a really fun time watching this. I'm so happy that this got the Best Adapted Screenplay at the Oscars. Everyone in this film is phenomenal. The standout for me was definitely Sterling K. Brown, who was nominated for this film in the supporting category. I talked a little bit about this when I was talking about the American Society, but I really enjoyed it and thought that what it was trying to get across was worth its weight in gold and made a lot of sense to me. And a lot of people didn't love the film, and I have tried to stay open to the different feedback coming for this film. Again, it's not necessarily like my decision, right, to say if it correctly and authentically portrayed the life of a Black artist in America right now. But I was listening to a podcast, my favorite podcast, I almost called it my podcast, The Big Picture, and the filmmaker Cord Jefferson talked with Sean Fennessy about particularly like the spacing of the plot, and how a lot of people didn't like that it was like these two different plot lines blended together, but he was trying to show, again, what I talked about with the American Society of like what people expect from a Black person's story in America and what a Black person's story actually is. And so I thought with that context that it was fascinating the way that they blended those two plot lines together, and a lot of people that just like didn't work for them from like a storytelling standpoint, which makes sense, but it really worked for me and I thought it was a great watch. Next, A Ghost Story. I went to the A24 like Valentine's Day reissue screenings. I didn't know what to expect of this one. I knew that people regarded it highly, but I'm honestly not a huge fan of either Rooney Mara or Casey Affleck, and so I didn't know what to make of it, and this movie absolutely wrecked me. It was on Valentine's Day and I was sobbing. I left the movie theater like face blotchy and puffy and cried, and then listened to the main song from this film on repeat for like 3 days and recounted the entire plot of the movie to Sam and to my mom, which Sam calls these Kelsey Denny movie summaries, TM, and she likes to say that she feels like she could log them on Letterboxd after I do this because she just feels like she's watched the movie. So maybe we'll make a video like that one day, and A Ghost Story might be high on the list, so I won't talk about it too much. But it was beautiful. I didn't care for, honestly, like the whole middle section of the film, and it didn't matter because the first third and the last third of the movie were so poignant that it didn't matter that it lost its way in the middle because they completely like landed the plane and got the point across, and it was absolutely breathtaking. My ninth favorite movie of the year so far is May December. This is on Netflix. And the talk around this movie has been so mind-boggling and interesting to be a part of. It's certainly not a film for everyone by any means, and the choice to change the tone of the film from something that could be so extremely dramatic to something that is like awkward and pitiful and comedic at times was so interesting. More than anything, I thought it was a fascinating take on being an actor, particularly today's like movie standard society. I still am trying to figure out how to put all of that into words, but the fact that like Natalie Portman's character, for instance, having a really honest discussion with high school age students about filming sex scenes and how you know, it's fake and it's awkward, and that's what actors talk about, is that it's so like staged that you don't feel anything, but how that's not always true, and that sometimes you like lose yourself and you forget where to draw the line. to then, you know, her later filming a scene with the Charles Melton like teenage stand-in and her wanting to do another take because she's almost to something real, and what that says about what actors or anyone in the film industry or so, you know, anyone that's celebrity, like what they're willing to forgive or not think about or not notice because they're trying to create the best art that they can, was so wildly interesting. And I feel like that's something that I would love to discuss with someone else. So if you're willing to have that discussion and think that deeply about it, I would say go for it. But again, it's not something that is for everyone by any means. All of Us Strangers was my 11th favorite movie of the year, and honestly, I wanted to like it even more than I did, and it's still at 11. I think there was something slightly missing, an explanation of sorts in the plot and in the ending, but otherwise just needed to be felt, and it got that across so well that it didn't matter that the plot was confusing or didn't feel complete at times. And then on top of it, there's all of these amazing performances by all 4 cast members in the film, but particularly Andrew Scott, who I think that he is just quite possibly the best actor alive right now. He can get across so much in such a frank and very realistic way, so much so that it doesn't feel like a performance. And he continued to do that absolutely in this film. Also, look at that poster. This is one of my favorite posters of the year so far. I think that this is just stunning, stunning. Okay, a throwback compared to, I guess, all of the other films on this list. My 12th favorite film of the year is Empire Records. I had never seen it before, obviously. And I really enjoyed myself. It was just fun. There were definitely some plot points that I didn't understand or wouldn't have put in myself, but otherwise it was just like a good old classic teenage dramedy with some romance influence. And if you care about music, they've got a ton of that. And it was fun to watch all these actors so young and early in their careers, and other actors that I was confused that I didn't know who they were, because it seemed like from this movie that they had such a like promising career ahead of them. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed this one and had a fun time. I felt like it had a little more to say than its other comps of this time, and I enjoyed myself, and sometimes that costs more than anything else. Next, Iron Claw. Everyone and their mother has talked about this movie, so again, I feel like I can't say anything new about it. The performances were magnificent and breathtaking and heartbreaking. I had a hell of a time fighting against my gatekeeping urges when Harris Dickinson started getting really popular for this role, but this is just as emotionally manipulative as everyone has been talking about, but like in a good way, if that's possible. And I think it is pretty prevalent in the filmmaking industry, so I highly suggest watching this one if you're into the idea of this, or if you've seen anything good about it. It's for a reason. In 14th place, Brittany Snow's directorial debut, Parachute, which she also wrote, and is truly semi-autobiographical, if not fully autobiographical. I went to an American Cinematheque screening of this film at the Los Feliz Theater. I went particularly because Thomas Mann is one of my all-time favorite actors, and I love supporting his newer projects, that it feels like he's putting a lot more thought into what he's taking and the roles he's putting himself into. And so I went for him because I haven't seen one of his new movies in a long time, and I was very excited about it. I enjoy Brittany Snow, but I wouldn't say that I know a lot about her or that she's one of my like favorites, but I really enjoy her. And so I was very excited to go see what this film was about, and she came out for a Q&A afterwards, and so I was excited to learn about it. This is a film more than anything else I would suggest looking up trigger warnings. It is about a young woman in her 20s who gets out of rehab for an eating disorder and what her life is as she tries to adjust back to life in New York in the 21st century. What I didn't know was that it is also about a codependent relationship in the face of her recovering from rehab, which is where Thomas Mann, my beloved, comes into the story. And this is something that I have extreme personal experience with. And Thomas, someone who I have an odd parasocial relationship with, was basically playing myself and an experience that I had 6 or 7 years ago. And so it was so hard to watch and quite honestly caused me to have a panic attack on the way home. But please hear me when I say that is because it was so well done and it was so honest and it was something that I know to be true about life and the way that people handle their relationships when they're dealing with their own personal shit. So I can't say that everyone is going to think as highly of this film as I would if someone has, you know, an outside perspective on this. But as someone who has been through it, I am very, very thankful to Brittany Snow for putting that out into the universe. And I know she was so nervous afterwards to talk about it and was still so open and honest about this, like truly being her story. And I'm so thankful for that. And I wish that I could tell her that, you know. It's just one of those things that you want to be like, you made a whole ass movie about it and you're not alone, and people are watching this movie and have experienced those feelings before, and we're so moved by it. And I don't know, I just I had a really interesting time watching this film, and I'm so happy that I got to go to the Q&A with her afterwards. And in a total different category, my 15th favorite film of the year so far has been Ferarri. It didn't get as much press and accolades as I think everyone thought it was going to, but I still really enjoyed my time watching it. Adam Driver just continues to blow us away. For a type of film that I'm not usually super interested in, it kept my attention incredibly well, and I like wanted to know, you know, what became of these characters who are real life people. So I thought that was an extremely well done biopic from someone who doesn't really like biopics and also doesn't really care about like the sport car racing area of life, but is learning more about it because my roommate is very, very into F1 racing. So I really liked it. This slide is particularly for my favorite film that has come out in 2024, which again is The Book of Clarence, and I don't know that that's gonna get beat out by the end of this year. This slide is for my most rewatched film of the year so far. Right now we've got Tenet with 2 watches and Dune Part 2 with 2 watches. And my top actor of the year right now is Robert Pattinson. I've seen 3 of his films. Tenet I've seen twice. I also saw The Lighthouse, as mentioned, and watched The Lost City of Z. I do have a couple other actors that were also, like, I've seen 3 of their movies. I just picked R-Pats because thematically I felt like what I talked about with Tenet earlier, it fit, and I feel like I'm gonna watch a lot more of his movies this year now that I like him so much. So that's my Q1 in movies so far. I feel like the last like 2 or 3 weeks, I feel like not too many films have come out. I feel like my AMC stubs has gone to waste the last couple weeks. It's like one of those, you know, that not enough was coming out. But otherwise, I've really enjoyed the movies that have come out this year so far, and there's so many to look forward to. So we'll see how my stats change at the end of, when's the next one? July, right? April, May, no, end of June. End of June, that was silly. Yes, at the end of June, I will do another quarter wrap up, and we'll see what has changed. So